Kishu, Paladin and Dragon Rider. This is Doragons Domain, episode 20, My Material Plane. A while back, when I was doing these original videos, I did them for a while, and then I stepped away from social media for, about 15 months, just life and whatnot. But then I did Doragons Domain episode 19 recently. You can check that out. That has to do with my integrating Waterdeep into my homebrew campaign. I want to talk a little bit about, but during this last year and a half, and even before, when I was doing social media, I was working on different things, different lands and different things. Basically, I played D&D when I was a teenager, played it in my 20s, played World of Warcraft in my 30s, and then got back into D&D in my 40s. And I wanted to be a player. I was normally a dungeon master in my 20s and 30s, but I just wanted to be a player. Just kind of wanted to. So I got the player's manual and learned how to be a player in Dungeons and Dragons, and asked a guy if he could run a group. And you guys some of you that have watched my other videos might know this already, but he didn't have time to create homebrew material, so I had created homebrew material on social media, or during that period. And so I supplied a material, and then he altered it, and we started a campaign. It's about 5 of us. And as I've mentioned before, it was 1/3 good, 1/3 not great, and 1/3 canceled short notice. So it was a struggle, and finally kind of ended in the end of 2017, somewhere around the time that I stepped away from social media. And then I had another group I was running with, just 2 players. Where I bought the Dungeon Master guide. I wanted to be a Dungeon Master. That was right towards the end of that period, and I was running a group of 2 people, and that kind of went away. Next thing I knew, I wasn't playing, so I started to write stories in my writing blog about a group of people getting together and playing D&D, and then I'd write in and out. I'd write their interactions prior to the game, and then I'd write the characters and what they were doing, which I haven't posted that on my Dungeons and Dragons blog yet, but I might. But then I started to run a campaign with 1 person. I've done this a couple times in my DM career, but this one has lasted a year now. I'm not going to go too far into that because I'm going to do a different video, because I don't want this thing to be too long, about running a campaign with just 1 person, which has been great, but obviously it can be challenging. Anyway, during the period that I was on social media, a year and a half plus ago, and during the period in the last year and a half, I've been developing my material plane, and I've also been filling up the areas of stuff that I've created before, basically using everything I had created before and the last year and a half to kind of create this world for the campaign, the current campaign that I'm running. But I want to tell you a little bit about my material plane. Okay, so I may have mentioned this in another video, but the way my material plane works is there's basically 2 material planes. There's my world, because I homebrew, and then there is Faerun, which I have incorporated into my current campaign slowly, and then in the middle, basically underneath the ground, is the Underdark. And the way that it works is that you can go, if you can get into the Underdark, you can come up in the other material plane. Obviously it would take a long time, etc. But that's one way that you can get from one material plane to the other. The other way, of course, is plane shift, teleporting there and whatnot. So basically my homebrew material plane, there's 6 continents, but there's also a small little, basically like an island, which you can kind of call it a 7th continent, but it really just has 1 city. And then there's a demi-plane, which I have not gone way into, but it's a 7th continent. I guess it would be an 8th continent. There's the island, and then there's another continent. But I've created, and it's part in the material plane and part in another plane. The continent and land that this campaign that I started doing last year is ran in Veremore. Veremore has several different parts or regions. It has a northern region, which is a lot of mountains, and then the forest region, a lot of trees, just a ton of them, and then the hill region, a lot of hills. Sounds kind of generic, but but they also have some of the other, terrains as well. And then there's the completely unexplored desert terrain, which is the southern part of Veremore. When I first started this campaign, Veremore basically had towns and villages. There's no cities. So it's not super developed. But the main town is a barbarian town on the coast, on the west coast, called Court. And my player at some point pretty quickly within the beginning of the campaign reached Court and connected there. And then the rest is campaign stuff going from that forward, but that gives you a basic idea about Veremore. The next plane, which is a big part of this campaign, is called Aconia. Aconia is a very amazing land, and it is ran, well, there are 3 kings that are combating. There's the king who believes he's actually the born leader of this land. And then there's another king that came and kind of ended up accidentally banging heads in with the leader. He didn't know that this guy was running the whole thing, because the thing about the main king is he didn't have armies all through the continent, and yet he still calls himself the king, and it was confusing. So that was kind of a war that started, that's gone for about 200 years. Not at this point, things had happened, but when I started it, there's this war that had happened between these two. So much so that 200-year war created a very scared populace. And then out of that rose a 3rd king, who was the king of the people. And he's kind of letting these two take themselves out, and he was going to take out the one that lost. But it was stretching out, and so it gives you a nice idea of the politics in there. Moving on, there's Polis. Let me back up. Aconia does have cities. They have a main city called Rhone, and it's a very neutral place. In fact, it's kind of the main part of Aconia, where the kings are out here battling. Rhone is really the centerpiece of Aconia, and the leader of Rhone is actually a man who used to be a famous pirate who took over the place, became a leader under a fake name, and no one even knows his history. Even at this point in the campaign, they never found that out, but he's a really neat guy. I've had a picture of him looking a little bit like Captain Hook, but, but charismatic, and he's a cool thing. Sorry, now moving back to Polis. Polis is another continent that I actually used. I used a couple continents in my stories that I wrote, like I said, about the people plane. And Polis has not been visited by my current campaign. There's been talk of it a little because of something that's happening all throughout the material plane right now. But it does have a main city as well, and it's pretty developed. And then there's Galdur. Now Galdur is a continent that I was working on, I believe, when I was doing my other videos. And I actually, my story that I was writing about people playing Dungeons and Dragons started in Galdur and moved to Polis. But I also used Galdur as a starting point for first level adventure for the group I ran when I ran 2 people. And there's a southern port that's the Jor. It's ran by warriors, and there's barbarians, and the thing about Galdur is there are no established religions there, or at least there weren't before I was writing the story. So there's no like paladins and clerics that are established there. So it's one of the more underdeveloped in regards to that. So that leaves kind of openings for that kind of thing. And then there's Norwin. Now I created a module. I was working on a module a while ago on my video chats and I worked several months, and I was even considering self-publishing it, but I was also hesitant to self-publish anything to do with D&D because I really wanted it to be my place where I could create without pressure, without just pure freedom, and then you start to put yourself out in the public, out there for public to kind of, nay or yay your creations. It's a big decision. So I was going to do that. I was going to do a crowdfunder and everything, then I decided not to. But anyway, my point is this module took place in the southern part of Norwin. And Norwin was a continent that I really hadn't developed except for the southern part where this module was take place. It's called Frost Realm. If you guys have watched my videos before, that's where Frost Realm is. And in the campaign now it's developed Norwin. There's more things that have happened there. But I will say my campaign did at some point travel to Norway and go into Frost Realm. Frost Realm was like originally written as a 5th level module, and then I was thinking 8th level, and it's kind of like, you know, it's not complete. Last but not least is Despa. But before I get to Despa, there was also some area called the Shade Isles. So like I said, there's the 6 continents, and then there's the little island with the city on it, and then there's the continent that's half in material plane and half in another plane, demi-plane, and then there's the Shade Isles, which are these islands. So I'll talk about those in a second. Now Despa, when I was doing videos on Homebrew, which you can check out, I did them, like I said, about a year and a half ago. I created Despa, and I got help from the Dungeons and Dragons community for names and different things, but basically Despa is another place that has there's actually 4 kings. There is a barbarian king who really just is an older, he's an older character, and he just lives his life, and he has festivals, and he celebrates, and it's created this monstrous wall that covers a large part of the, like blocking the northern the northern part of the continent, and it's kind of to protect his people. And then beyond that wall, there is another king whose father had died a couple of years ago, and he wanted to prove himself as a king, so he was going to try to take over. He was trying to get all the other kings to let him rule. And once again, this is what it was when I began the campaign, what I created like a year and a half ago. And then there is a lizard king, and he's actually supposed to be the wisest of the kings, and and I actually connect him to the Frost Realm module. He's kind of connected, and kind of leads people to Despa. And then there's a 4th king who's like a mad king. He's an elven. He's an elven king, and there's a huge magical tree that he protects. But he's crazy, and he kills people, and he killed his own wife and his own kids. I'm sorry about that for people that bothers. But he's mad, and so he's kind of woo. That set up, and now we did incorporate Despa into our campaign and dealt with that. It wasn't their main place where they lived or anything, but we kind of, it did that. Just to touch on the other, besides the 6 planes, just to touch on the other few little things. The one is the island is called Aberlue. It's a singular city on this island, and it has a renowned thieves guild, which I created when I was back doing videos, called Shadows, or I think it's Shadows, and they're a renowned thieves guild. It's kind of a setup for a campaign or whatever, or a little quest thing. Also, I created something called a Dark Plane, which is also on my past videos. A Dark Plane is it's a plane of its own, and it's a prison plane, and it's ran, I believe, by a demon, and a son of a demon, or half demon, something like that. And the father didn't want him on, I think it was the abyss, right? It's where demons are. And so the father didn't want him there, and the son can't stand the material plane. He created this prison where people can pay thousands of gold to have people put there. So I'm going to finish this video in a different location, and hopefully there's not too much sound out here, but there was sound happening in the house. I usually do these videos when no one's home. So anyway, I'm like, I wonder if the sound of someone doing dishes is showing up in this video. And I'm like, well, I'm going to stop and wait. But no. Anyway, enough of that. To finish up, yeah, so there was Aberlue, the island that has the famous thieves, Shadows. But also, like I said, Dark Plane. I was telling you about Dark Plane, and there's, like I said, there's a video of that. I can link some of this stuff down below. Because Dark Plane, I really actually incorporated in the campaign for the first time ever with this last little while, so that was really cool. Yeah, and then there's the Shade Isles, or Isles of Shade. There was one particular quest thing, I think, that was attached to that. I'm trying to remember if it was in my story I wrote. I know we didn't use it in the campaign. And then there's the other, the plane, the continent that's half in a plane and half in a material plane, half not, called Quarium, which I haven't fully developed that yet, but I do have a map, and I do have a
NPC character, friend of the campaign group, who started there, and he's a warlock, and he's met his patron there, and he's traveled to discuss his contract with his patron and things. But my players haven't made it over there, but Aquarium's undeveloped. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about my material plane, and hopefully it inspires. If you have any questions, of course you can ask. And other than that, I'll be doing my next video, which I might do it today and just put it up later, but about running a campaign with one person, which is, like I said, it's been great, but it's can be challenging too, and it doesn't replace playing with groups, which I just love. Whether I'm a player or dungeon master, generally a dungeon master, but yeah. So thanks for checking out Doragons Domain, and I'll see you on Twitter.